window. We'll look at that for both doors and windows. We'll cover some basics of input. We had a couple questions towards the end of last time about input. We'll just cover some of that. We're going to look at things like setting a door or window into the frame. So if you have a thicker wall, how do you control where that window is, it flush with the outside, inside, centered, that sort of thing, as well as butting multiple windows up together. So if you have something like a large opening that consists of multiple different panels of windows, how to do that. And then finally, we'll kind of take a skim at editing dynamic components. So we're not going to go into creating a dynamic component from scratch or really dig into absolutely everything there is to know about dynamic components, but enough that you'll get the feel for what that is, how those work, and what kind of changes you can make. In this case, we'll be taking a standard door and turning it into an archway. So that'll kind of get our feet wet with editing. It's possible in the future we'll do something that's a little more in-depth editing for SketchUp Pro users on actually manipulating those dynamic components. So with all of that, we will go ahead and hop in and just get started. So again, as you have questions, do go ahead and send them in. I will do my best to address every single question that comes in. If I don't get to your question, do feel free to follow up with us either through the questionnaire or email, and we'll try to take care of everybody one way or another. All right, so right now we're going to look at doors and windows. Right here I have a wall with a set of standard window components. This first one I have is just my normal fixed window. Remember, windows, unlike doors, just have a type. There's not a type and a style. So the first three here are the fixed horizontal and vertical sliders. This is the horizontal, this is vertical, named after the direction they would slide. So you can see with the sliders, there's actually two pieces. If I choose to interact with them, I can actually slide the panels back and forth like that. Same with the horizontal. You can slide the top up, down. The rest, if I look at this one right here, the rest, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, will all look like this one right here. These are sort of templates. So these dynamic components can be manipulated however you want and represent whatever your special window case might be that you want to have in Build Edge. So that's why we gave you that 4 through 10. The final window in here is the opening only, and that literally just punches a hole in the wall. It closes up the edges, but that's it. So that's what I'd use if I had if I have a dynamic component or just a component in SketchUp that I want to place into a hole in the wall. You could use that opening only type to put your holes in and then put a component in afterwards, separate from Build Edge. Those are all of the window types that come with stock Build Edge. Next, we're going to hop into doors. I'm going to look at standard doors first, or swing doors, excuse me. So in swing doors, my standard door is this common, just a slab of a door. All doors are interactive too, so I can at any time come into interact, click on a door, and it actually did open. There we go, just couldn't see it. Open and close it. So there's a bunch of stuff that's editable about this, what degree is the swing, do I have a doorknob versus a handle. We'll look at that in just a few minutes. Right now I just want to run through the rest of these types. Remember, doors do have two sets of properties. I have the type, which is basically the shape of the door, and then the style. So the style for, whoops, I just made it shorter and swung it around. The style for these doors is a standard, and I have a glass, 4-panel, and 6-panel. Again, the last few, types 5 through 10, all look like the standard door. Again, these are just templates that you can manipulate as you need to create the custom doors you want in Build Edge. All right, we're going to start going a little bit quicker through some of these. In this case, I have double doors. The double doors are exactly the same as the standard doors, I have standard glass, 4-panel, 6-panel, and then 5 through 10 look like the standard. Again, your templates for editing. But whoa, what's going on there? Got a rogue door. Get rid of that. All right, bypass doors. Bypass doors have a whole lot of names depending on how you use them. Closet doors, slider doors, whatever you want to call it. These are, again, interactive. And as I click, I can see that the different panels slide past each other. And that's how an interactive door works. Again, there's a set here, standard, glass, 4-panel, 6-panel. You guys are probably picking up on the naming conventions at this point. Standard, glass, 4-panel, 6-panel, and then again 5 through 10 are going to be these templates. Keep on moving through here. In this case, I have bifold doors. This is just a single bifold. If I interact with bifold doors, there's actually 2 movements they'll make. One is partially open, kind of 45-degree, and then again to open all the way. Then again, here it is, standard, glass, 4-panel, 6-panel, and then 5 through 10 are copies of standard. Almost there. Double bifold, they move the same way. Partially open, all the way open. They do move in unison. I can't open just one. But again, standard, glass, 4. Actually, we call these 2-panel because each door actually has 2. 3-panel, and then standard for 5 through 10. Last door type is garage door. There's only 3 types I have here. Oops, if I click on them, it does just throw the door up and overhead. If I interact with them, this is a standard garage door. This I just call a panel door, and then this is glass panels because it does have glass lights up there. I had a question going back to the sliding doors. Which can I change? Which one is stationary? You can actually. It's whichever one you pick on. So actually, both of them move. In this case, from the front, I'm just picking on the front. If I flip around to the back, then I should be able to slide that back panel. So you can see the back panel slid on that one. I come around to the front door, moving the front. So both of them actually slide. Neither of them are fixed. And that's the same for the windows, doors, all the interactions. Garage doors. So those are the 3 types. The final door, the additional doors in garage are actually all the way 4 through 10, and they are all just copies of the standard door. Oops, I just changed that. And then last thing I have in here are my other doors. These are actually just different door types. I have a cased opening and then an opening only, same as in Windows. I had a question come up about pocket doors. We don't have a door type for pocket doors. The question with pocket doors really comes down to what do I want to have in the wall. If it's more concerned about framing where I have the opening for the door and the pocket, then it's going to be actually a larger opening than I show. If all I'm concerned about is having the ability to move that door in and out, then it would be possible to take a standard door and actually make a dynamic component to do that. And then I had another question about hangar doors for aircrafts. We don't have anything specific. Again, most of what we're gearing towards is residential or light commercial, so aircraft hangar doors have not come up. But I would imagine between double door sliders or garage doors, I don't know a lot of specifics about aircraft hangar doors, but I imagine one of those could be modified to match the geometry. I got a couple more questions that are coming up that we're going to look at the properties of doors and windows right now, so I'm not going to address those, but hopefully they'll get covered in just a minute or two. I'm going to close this, and we're going to look at inputting some doors and windows. First thing I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go ahead and draw in a couple doors and windows, and we'll just look at some placement items. And just throw a wall in right here. And I'm going to place a window. And somebody asked me to review this last time we had a webinar. So I'm just going to go through placement again real quick, just spend a minute on this. When I go to place, in the case of a door or a window, the up or down arrow key will switch what side of the wall the door or window is going to face to. The mouse is going to let me move. If I move left to right, it'll move that way. If I move up and down, it'll actually move where the placement or the measurement point is. So this becomes important when I have multiple windows and doors in the wall. I'll look at that in just a second. Hitting the left or right arrow key toggles between my placement points. And remember, that's not just the placement point, that's actually where that door window is going to anchor to. I'm going to go ahead and just place this right here so I can do this. I was saying up and down as I slide right now, it's going to show me from the left side of the window being placed to the right side of the placed window what my dimension is. If I slide my mouse above or below the window, that dimension line will shoot to the outside wall. Either way, it's still going to anchor to the left side wall, but this way I can actually do dimensioning window to window rather than pulling everything off of the end. The other thing that was asked was if I want to reference a point outside of the wall, say that point, I want my window to be centered at that point, what I can do is come back in here into Windows, and if I hold down the Shift key on the keyboard, you see that my outline gets kind of bold there, and then I can use any snap points I want. So I can use things like, well, it was not a valid placement point, but the middle of the wall, or this point right here, should toggle to the middle, but holding down Shift while you're placing is how you control that. Once that door window is placed is when you can do a couple different things. I just had a question about this. If I want to change the properties afterwards, if I wanted this to, say, place them the wrong way where I actually want trim on the inside or the other side of the wall, I can just click on it. Oops, yeah. Click. If I just drag for a little bit, then I'm back in placement, and any of those placements I did can be done again that way. I did have a question about this. We do, again, this was just the way that we modeled them, is with trim on one side of the window and not the other. That's just how we did it. Again, as if you're a SketchUp Pro user, you can open those windows up and make whatever changes you want. If you want trim on both sides, you can do that. You can add that. That's not a problem. So that was a couple things I wanted to cover about the basics of placement. I want to throw another we'll put a horizontal slider right here. Uh-oh, I did something wrong. Hold on just a second. So I got some messages up on my screen about something else. Apparently it's time to do some maintenance on my computer. Okay. Back up. All right. All right. I'm going to throw in a couple windows, and we're going to look at some properties. I'll throw a door in here too so we can look at that. Swing door. I'm using glass doors for most of this, and that's just because they have a couple extra options that I'll show you in just a second. So once I have a window in here, I can pick on it. I can make all my changes through the Build Edge UI. If I go to Standard Select, or I'm just going to pick it with SketchUp Select, I can bring up my Component Options window. Component Options is available in both SketchUp Make and SketchUp Pro. Component Attributes is only available in Pro. That's something we'll be looking at in a few minutes when we go customize a door opening. In this case, I'm just going to pull up the options. The options are going to come up, and it's going to show me the information about this specific window. So in the last webinar, I think I made a real quick change, like I changed the color of the window or something like that. Simple stuff like that can be changed real easy. But all the rest of this, all the pieces that I have that make up this whole thing are actually have attributes set that can be manipulated through this. So I'm just going to look at some of them that I can turn on or play with. I can play with things like the casing. So in here, look at this. This is my trim right here. This piece is what I called the casing. And I believe this piece right here is what I called the sash. And again, I know some of you guys are definitely more experienced with doors and windows than I am. I pray that you don't be too mean to me. I had to pick a term, and these terms seem to work. I know sometimes people have different terms for different pieces where the casing is here and then, you know, whatever, but those are the names that I had to settle on something. So that's kind of what we ended up using. But all of this stuff then, like I said, having said that, can be changed. So if I want to change how far the windows overlap, I come in here and set that to 3 inches, and that'll actually push the two pieces past each other a little bit rather than lining up. So if I want a bigger sash size, I can change that, and it'll actually, whoops, that was the depth or the width. Maybe that's this. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So make those kind of things bigger, and really the best way to get a hang of this stuff is documented and on our website where most of these are described. But again, I'm a big fan of just playing with something until I understand it. So I do recommend just coming in here, grabbing one, and making these changes, and you'll get the hang of how it all works. Those are kind of changes that I can make to a window. If I look over here to doors have different properties than a window has, obviously. So if I pick a door, I can change things like what color is my knob going to be. So if rather than silver, I want to have it be gold, I can make that change. I do have some preset geometry in there for knob versus handle versus what we call the push-pull, which is a push bar or something representing a push bar on the side, and then a pull handle on the other side. But then I can change some other things. Like I was saying, right now, if I interact with this door, it's going to swing to 90 degrees, but I can actually change that. So if I wanted that to be 45 because there's some weird geometry on the inside, or because just the way I want to do it, perfectly good reason, I could do that, and then it will only swing to 45. The other thing that's real important in here too is all the geometry that's in here is user definable. So everything from the casing size to the trim to anytime I have any of these panels, each of these panel sizes have a property here that says how big it's supposed to be. Rather than try to come up with a standard size for this stuff, which again, like I said, everybody has their own standards, which is difficult for somebody who's trying to satisfy everyone because everyone's standard is not the same as everyone else's standard, as much sense as that made. So what we did is we just made everything an attribute for everything. So there's nothing in here that is assumed. So if I want to make a smaller style, that side panel smaller, or the kick rail, the bottom rail bigger, I can make that. Everything is editable here. I had a question come up about colors. We really just deferred to the SketchUp palette. So any color that is a named color, you can just type the name in here. If it's not a named color, if it has a number or something like that, you type that number in here and it will change it to the equivalent in your materials panel in SketchUp. So this was the easiest way we had to go through the process of coming up with a way to import colors and all that kind of stuff was painful, so we just deferred to, kind of said, do whatever SketchUp already has set up. All right, so that's kind of the basic overview of the options for both windows and doors. Just to look at a couple examples of what I can do with that. So right here, I have a window that is actually 3 pieces. If I pick this in Build Edge, I'll have a 2-foot vertical slider, a 5-foot fixed, and another 2-foot vertical slider. And you can see they look like they kind of all just mesh right together. So we're going to do that. I'm going to show you how to place that right now. So I'm going to start with is I'm going to put my fixed 5-foot window right here. Oops, I just edited this. Oops, all right. I edited the previous window because it was still selected because I was in input and not, or I was in editing, not input. So first I'm going to look over here, make sure I'm in the right mode. Then I'm going to pick a 5-foot fixed window, and I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to place it somewhere. The placement really isn't important to the process of what I'm doing. I just want to get it in there. Now I'm going to come over here, and for my next window, I'm going to pick that. I'm just going to imitate the same thing. I'm going to put a vertical slider that is 2 foot wide. And now when I come to place it, I'm going to change the placement point, so I'm placing left to right. Now we have a little bit. This is where I got to kind of fake this a little bit, because I cannot actually get these two to butt perfectly. They can come real close, but I can't get them. If the 2 openings overlap, it causes problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come like this, and I'm going to tell it down the lower right corner, I'm going to put a dimension in of 0.01. And that's going to place my window overlapping slightly. I'll come back to 0.01 in just 1 second. I'm going to place this other one in here, 0.01, and those 2 will go in and overlap. So if I zoom in here super tight, I can actually see that 0.01 inches. So this is the one window, this is the other window. They don't quite overlap. There is, like I said, there is logic in there that says I can't punch 2 holes in the walls that lap over each other. I do have a request into our development group to address that, to allow me to actually butt the 2 up against each other so I have a single line between, and it seems like that should be possible, but it doesn't have that right now. So right now I do have this little teeny tiny gap. Fortunately, by the time I come out to any reasonable distance, it disappears. All right, so I'm partway there, but obviously I got some issues with my trim. So what I can do now is using regular select, not Build Edge Direct Edit, but regular select, I'm going to pick the middle window. With the middle window selected, I'm going to come down to the bottom here, and I'm going to turn my left trim to hidden and my right trim to hidden and apply that. 2 pieces of trim go away. I'm going to select my left window and turn off the right trim, hidden, apply, and the right window and turn off the left trim. By doing that, because of the way that trim is placed, the edges are hidden. If I come up here, actually, let's go look at hidden geometry. Well, actually, that shows a lot more than I wanted to see because this geometry is still here. But you can see the way the trim is broken up. The trim is actually 8 pieces, 3 across the top, 3 across the bottom, and 2 in the middle. But those controls are hooked up in such a way that turning that invisible actually turns all those pieces off and leaves the 2 hidden ends butting up against each other. So it's a nice way to do that. You could do the same thing with doors. You'd have doors butt up against each other, doors and windows. If I had a full tall window in a door, any of those kind of things we put in, I could turn that trim off selectively to make it look like one piece, even though it's multiple windows together. The thing to note, though, is that if I do come in and do something like this, I select this window and scoot it over, a couple things. This doesn't automatically just turn on because the window went away. If I wanted that to come back, I would have to turn it on, or turn it back on. The other thing is when I replaced that, it did go back and put the window back the way it was upon placement. So it turned this trim back on when I moved it away. Again, just something to be aware of, that will happen. So you have to be, if you're going to make changes, move changes like that, you will have to do some re-editing possibly. Another thing to look at is what we call the inset. This door, if I take a door and I'm just going to place another door right here, I'm going to actually have it swing towards me. When I place it, doors and windows, by default, the actual door itself comes to the inside. So wherever it's swinging towards, the door tries to stay flush with the wall. That's just the default behavior. But it is possible to take it and push it into a wall. So in this case, I have this is a 12-inch wall, so I have this door kind of resting inside a couple inches. This can be done by selecting, and again in the component options, I can set this casing inset to a couple inches, and it'll actually push it back. So you can see how that goes in. Again, just something I want to point out, maybe not immediately apparent if you're going and using doors and windows, how that works. All right, so again, like I said, the best way to get in and get used to these options is just to draw a wall, place a door or window, right-click, component options, and start changing things. There's really not much you can hurt. Worst case, you can delete it and draw it again. So there's not much you can go wrong with editing component options. Now on the other side of the coin, we're going to go take a look at actually editing dynamic components. So this is where you can hurt yourself and your build edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new model, just a standard SketchUp model, nothing special at this point. And I'm going to do some dynamic component editing. So a couple things I want to point out here. One is dynamic component editing is available through SketchUp Pro. If you have SketchUp Make, you won't be able to do this. The other thing is, if you have not done dynamic component editing before, there are a lot of tools out there, tutorials, that sort of thing. Even through the warehouse, I think you can get those that explain how dynamic components work. Dynamic components are extremely powerful tools that you can use with Build Edge and with regular SketchUp, but it is worth investing some time and energy into learning how they work before you expect to just kind of start editing and playing with them before you know how they're supposed to work. So what I want to do right now for you guys is give you just a real basic overview of the kind of thing you can do with dynamic components. What I'm not looking to do is teach you guys everything there is to know about dynamic components right now. That would be more than this next half hour we have of webinar. If there's enough response, maybe we'll do a whole hour dedicated to editing doors and windows and dynamic components. But right now I just wanted to give you an overview so you'd see how this stuff works. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about dynamic components. So depending on if you are in Windows or Mac, of course, the location of your dynamic components will change slightly. I do not remember off the top of my head exactly what those paths are, but they are, like I said, there's a document on our website. If you go to buildedge.com, you go to the tutorial page, at the bottom there is a document on dynamic component editing. at the top of that document is the direct path to all of your dynamic components. In fact, this shows, I can't remember it, that's why I had to bookmark it so I could jump right to it. And this is going to be a list of all your dynamic components. They are named based on their type and their style. All of that is laid out in that document. So I do recommend taking a look at it. What we're going to do is we're going to actually go in and modify a couple of standard doors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a door for the standard type, the swing type, style 10, which is the last of the user defined. So I'm going to come down, and I've actually already did this because I was experimenting. I'm going to start by renaming it BS10-backup. When Build Edge goes and grabs these dynamic components, it grabs them by the specific name it's looking for. So when it goes to grab user-defined style number 10 for swing doors, it goes and gets BS10, and that's it. So having this -backup means it won't see this at all. So all this was a copy of the original door. So I'm going to open that backup version. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to import. I just clicked on it in Finder, that's why that happened. And I'm going to import BS10 backup. So again, I want to make sure I rename it. The biggest issue is if something goes wrong, if I break this door somehow, then I have that backup I can revert back to and Build Edge won't have a problem. So this is my standard door. I'm going to go ahead and delete him out of the way because he's kind of creeping me out standing behind my door like that. This is my standard door. When I open it up, I can right-click on it and I can go to Component Attributes, and that's going to bring a different window up. Again, this is SketchUp Pro only, and this is going to actually show all of the information and pieces that make this dynamic component. So like I said, we put a lot. Most of the information in here is based on dynamic component information. So nothing's hard-coded, nothing is the same or anything like that. Everything is unique. It's real nice because you get a door that does anything you want to do. Downside is there's a whole lot of information in here. Again, I'm going to skip through some of the basics of editing and just kind of show you, give you an idea of what can be done here. I'm going to start by double-clicking on the component. That's going to open up the component. Now, each of the pieces inside of here is actually a separate component inside that component. So again, like I said, I want to make an archway that I can put into my model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete out anything that's not relative to the archway right now. So this is going to kind of get a little bit wrecking ball style of editing here, but I'm going to come through and delete my door. I'm going to delete the 2D swing off the floor. I'm going to delete my trim pieces. I'm just selecting them and hitting delete on the keyboard is all, nothing fancy, until I get down to just my frame. That's all I really want right now. Because this door was a swing door, I actually had a left and a right swing. Only one of the swings was visible, so if I come up here to hidden geometry, I'll actually see the door that was hidden too. And you can see not just the door, but my different knobs, my push bar, my handle on the back, all of that is part of this component right here. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that as well as my mirrored swing. All right, so now I'm down to just the casing. And notice I'm going to give me one moment. I was, like I said, in preparation for this, I did go through and make sure everything I was saying was true and going to work. In doing that, I goofed up a couple of my components. So this isn't something you should have to worry about what I'm doing right now. These should actually already be set up for you if you were to go in here by yourself. All right. So now I'm down to just my casing. There's actually two pieces. One is this rough opening, which is just basically a box that represents the hole in the wall. And then the casing is actually made up of these 7 pieces. I'm sorry, 5 pieces. Left, there's a little piece in the corner, the top, little piece in the corner, piece on the right, that resize appropriately based on the attributes of the door. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually make a new component that's going to represent the archway. And I'm going to do this. I'm in the component right now, but not inside any of the pieces. And I'm going to draw a rectangle where the arch is going to go. I'm going to come across here. This is 2'6". I'll make this a half circle arch. So I'm going to go down 1'3", and I'm going to come straight across and then back up. That gives me a rectangle. Now I'm just going to use the SketchUp arch command, or command, put my arch in, and I'm going to push that through to the opposite side. And now I'm going to select that arch and make it a component. When I selected that, I actually got some of my other pieces, so I'm going to use Shift. Oops. Again. Got the door frame selected, which is has no real surface to it, so it's hard to unselect. All right, so now I have just my geometry of my arch. Now I'm going to take that and I'm going to make it a component. I'm going to call it, just because it's a good practice, I'm going to call it BS10 arch. All right, so that's my arch. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the component axes. Rather than being at the bottom, I want it to anchor by the top left. So I'm going to set that. When I do that, I get a new component in my, a new subcomponent in my component right here, which is my arch. Obviously, if I place this door exactly the size, it would look great. It would look just like this. If I resize it all, though, it's going to end up looking odd. So I'm going to add a couple of attributes to my arch. I'm going to go in and tell it I want the position and the size of that arch to be defined by the properties. So up here in properties, I have a whole bunch of stuff. If you guys were paying attention, you may notice some of these values and names look familiar. From here, from the door material down to the trim depth, all of this information is what showed up in that option screen. The last few, casing through wall depth, is set in the build edge UI and then forced into the properties of the component. So it's real important that these ones right here never get changed. If these get changed, then this component will not work at build edge at all anymore. So it's real important that I can use these values, but I don't ever want to go in and change how these attributes are named or formatted or anything else. And again, all this stuff is in that document that is up on the website. In fact, it's probably overly cautioned. I think 4 or 5 times it goes through and it warns you about making changes if you don't know what you're doing. But that's just because if you do end up making a change to a dynamic component that Build Edge doesn't know about, it can stop it from working, which is not good. All right, I'm going to go through stuff kind of quick, you guys. We're getting towards the end. Position, my X dimension, I want it to be inside the casing, so it's going to be equal to my casing width. Y is going to be equal to my, where is it? Casing inset. That means if I do change the inset like I did on that door on the 12-inch wall, the arch will move with it. And the Z, where is it going to be? That's going to be equal to whatever the door height is. All right. Up next, how long is the arch going to be? It's going to be as long as the doorway. How wide is it? How deep is it going to be? It's going to be as deep as the wall depth. And then what's the length going to be? It's going to be equal to whatever this is divided in half. That's going to keep our half circle. So this will always be half of whatever, or this will always be half of whatever this is. All right, with that done, my component should be ready to place. So what I'm going to do now is, and this is real important, rather than going up to File and hitting Save, I'm going to right-click and click Save As. I'm not sure what's different about this, but I know dynamic components don't keep all of their dynamic componentness unless I use a Save As command. And I'm going to save it as BS10. So that's going to replace the existing user-defined door number 10, swing door number 10, with this arch component. And I'm going to save it. You want to replace it? Yes. Now I'm going to quit SketchUp. I don't need to save this. I'm quitting SketchUp completely because when I ran it last time, I did open Build Edge. When I open Build Edge, it does load those dynamic components into memory. Closing SketchUp clears them all out. So my old door number 10 is no longer in memory anymore when I go in and I start SketchUp back up. That's an important step too. I actually had that issue as I was making these components. Drive me crazy. Why couldn't I get this thing to work? It was because I had the door I was working on loaded into memory and nothing I would do would change that. All right, so I'm going to put a wall in, and I'm going to go to Doors, Swing Door. It is, remember, we did call it BS, so it is still Swing Door. I go to Style number 10, and I'm going to put a 3'6" door. Again, this these little previews I see with the swing on there, that is a part of Build Edge. That's not inherited from the dynamic component or anything like that. So I still see that swing even though I deleted the swing out. That's not something I can change on the fly. I'm going to go ahead and place it right there. And there's my arch. Looks like I missed a piece of the 2D door in my model. If I come in here and select my door now, if I make it wider, it should, 5 foot by 6 foot. Oh, or hey, 5-inch works great too. Check that out. 5 foot. You see it's keeping my half circle arch. If I make it up taller, if I put up a 7 foot, 7-inch doesn't work so well. Whew. How about 7 foot? Looks good. So I can actually see how that goes there. I did not do a whole lot of cleanup. This is kind of obviously if I go change my view type. Oops, not that one. I could go in and change my words. There we go. I could go in and change my style to actually hide the lines and that kind of thing to make that look more cleaned up. The other thing I could do is when I was editing this, I didn't do this. I could have actually gone through and hid this line. I could have broken up my casing differently so that I could actually hide the lines of the pieces that align with the arch. I could do all that, and then it would actually show up as a much more unified looking arch that way. And as luck would have it, I actually did do that. It took a little more time, like I said, and so I didn't do this during our webinar, but yesterday I went ahead and made an arch the same way I did before, but I did a little extra work with hiding and ended up with this. Everything that is from the arch out, lines-wise, is hidden in this component. So if I wanted to, at this point, what I could actually do is I could select the wall, which is just a group. I could open that up, and I could actually use Shift Erase or Select and Hide to hide these three walls. Hide, not delete, very important difference. And if I do that, then I could actually get my arch to blend right in with the wall. So again, my main point of that tutorial was kind of to give you guys an idea and get you thinking. Your SketchUp, if you are SketchUp users already, some of the stuff is already what you were thinking about. But that's the kind of thing you can do. You can go in and make those kind of changes to the dynamic components and then still use them inside of Build Edge. This is just about everything that I had planned to show. I was hoping to have about 10-15 minutes left for questions at the end, and that just seemed to work out almost perfectly. I'd like to say that was because of my experience and incredible webinar abilities, but I'm going to probably lean on luck for the most part. The question is coming up about this. Right now, these styles 5 through 10, those names are hard, as well as actually all of these names are hard-coded right now, so you cannot change that. But it is something we have talked about, is actually coming up with a either deferring to a name attribute in the dynamic component or having a simple table where you could type in what the user-defined name is. So right now, there's no way to rename this to Arch Door. It'll always be Style 9. But that's something we had talked about for the future. I'm actually making note of that and bring that back up because that would be nice. Another question about making an arch by using the group command and then edit. Yeah, actually, that something else I want to point out is if you don't want to get into, I'm just drawing on a wall here. If I don't want to go into the process of editing doors and that's not a good example. Doing the dynamic component thing, you could, in theory, just come in here and make whatever changes you want to this geometry. That's perfectly fine. It's your SketchUp model. You can do whatever you want. The downside to that is it's one-off. I can make those changes one time, and it's not going to save. I can't put them in the next model. I can't put it into the next wall. But this could be edited on an individual basis. So if I didn't want the 2D swing, for example, I can select it, delete it, and it's gone out of this instance of this door this one time. The other thing you could do is you could always come in, if I wanted to mimic what I had right here, I could always come in and do something like this, and then edit this component and do the same thing I did before. How big is this? I could do something like this, but again, making this edit is perfectly fine, but it is a one-off edit, so if I had one arch in my entire house, I never really have arches, I could do something like this, and that would work. And I could go through the process of, like I was saying before, hiding lines, that kind of thing. So yeah, that is the question about just editing the group and making that change. That is perfectly doable too. Another question about having more than 10 custom doors. I agree. 10 was kind of where we started. We had no idea how this was going to go, but we may end up adding more than 10 custom doors. Can build edge dimension to the center line of a door window? I think what you're asking is when I'm putting in multiple doors or windows like this, can I have this dimension to the center line? Unfortunately, right now we don't have that. It's just to the edge. What happens is the dimension line shoots out from my mouse and hits the next dimensionable point. So it's something, again, that's something else we've talked about. So I could say right now we can't do it, but it doesn't mean that won't become available in the future. Another question about using doors or windows as skylights. Right now you can't. Doors or windows are only placeable into walls. Having said that, once I create this geometry right here is mine, and I can do whatever I want to. So if I wanted to get real weird with it and take this and pivot it and make it into a roof, I could do that. The only problem is at that point I would lose my build edge editability, but the geometry is yours. So if you really wanted to do something like that, you could. That would be possible. Another question about window trim, having different size pieces. Right now, in a standard window, if I look at my options for windows, I do have the ability of setting the window size, or the trim size, excuse me. So I can set the trim depth, which right now is a 1/2 inch, and the width, which is 3 inches. I can make that bigger, but it is uniform. It's all the pieces. What you could do is, I'm going to do it right here in editing, but you could do this in the dynamic component, is take this and I could, in this case, you know, scale this piece out. Actually, no, well, let me do it now because I have a bunch of attributes in there that are going to lock it back to what it's supposed to be. But you could open up this component in dynamic components and modify these pieces so that I had either a separate attribute for this piece on the top, or one time this was 8 inch and the rest were 4 inch or whatever. You could actually make that change. The other option would be to explode this so it's no longer a dynamic component and then make your edits here. That would work as well. Other question is, can I make the lever the default for the door? Absolutely. So right now, the door, like I said, I have an option for switching from a knob to a handle, and that is part of the dynamic component. All you would have to do is open this dynamic component, open this attribute, and put handle at the top of the list. It would take about 5 or 6 seconds per component to make that change. That's absolutely totally doable. A question about where to go to get the components. Again, like I said, I don't remember this off of the top of my head, so I will have to go look. But as we have 5 more minutes left at this point, let's go look that up. So if I come in here to Build Edge, and I go to my tutorials for Build Edge Pro, down at the very bottom of all these incredibly well narrated videos is a dynamic component PDF. If I click on that, I recommend downloading this. You know, print it out, keep it by your bedside. It's awesome insomnia reading. If I look in here, here are the paths. So in PC, it is users, username, app data, roaming, SketchUp, SketchUp 2014 or 15, SketchUp plugins, Build Edge, resources, components. This is why I didn't have it memorized off the top of my head. In Mac, it's application support, SketchUp 2014 or 15, SketchUp, plugins, Build Edge, resources, components. So again, if this is something you do with any regularity at all, I do recommend going there once and bookmarking that, because it's easy to get lost, especially since both Mac and Windows have folders similar to this structure in different spots. So it can be pretty frustrating if you do not have that information bookmarked or ready. I had another question come up just now about making molded trim or window frames, something with a profile. Absolutely. Again, we kept it simple. We kept it as low poly as possible with just rectangles, but there's no reason that the profile of this couldn't be something that is extruded. This piece right here is actually just a rectangle with a attributed length and width, so you could do that same thing with a extruded shape. The only issue that would come up, again, if I look at this, because of my hidden geometry, in order to make this work, this is actually multiple pieces, so you just have to know what you're going to do here. If it's the reason this is a square is if I had this all solid one piece and this solid one piece, as it resizes, it wouldn't line up properly as the sizes change. The other thing that having it in these pieces like this lets me do is turn off the entire left trim or the entire top trim. So you could have a profile that you stretch along here, though. That is perfectly possible. Another question about windows in gable ends. Right now, the roofs that we make, I'm just going to draw a real quick roof. The roofs we make are all roof, actually. So this thing right here is not actually a gable end wall at this point. This is actually a piece of the roof. So if I go to doors or windows, it's not going to see that as a potential for placing. Now this is where we're at right now. Again, we're in Build Edge Pro, the first release of Build Edge Pro at this point. At some point, I can see the ability to make this a wall instead of a piece of the roof, or give you the ability to place a window into that geometry. So just because that's a pretty standard profile to have that. So yeah, I can absolutely see something like that becoming available in future versions. Right now, it would really be a matter of coming in and using SketchUp to, create what you wanted there, and then maybe putting a component in there or something like that. Ooh, look more centered when I was over here. Stay here. So that is possible. It's just, like I said, not something you can do with the current window tool. All right, we've got 2 minutes left. If anybody else has any other questions. If not, like I said, my suggestion would be absolutely a couple things. Put some doors and windows in and use component options to check out how you can customize the doors and windows. If you are a pro user, then make the backup and manipulate those dynamic components and see what you can do there, because there's really, we made it that way intentionally because we wanted users to be able to make whatever types of doors or windows they needed. I have an option saying that somebody's trying to open, for example, BB01, the component options is blank. If you're trying to open it directly, then it's different. If it's in your model, you should be able to just pick it, right-click, and then open up component options. I will say this. I have had some issues while doing editing of multiple components where I got it to the point where this thing wouldn't show anything, and I actually had to close. I think it was something about purging the memory where I couldn't get stuff to show up here. But if you're in a normal model, you should be able to edit the component options. If you went directly in and opened a door or window component, then this won't show up like this. If you do want to edit a door or window component, you start with a blank model, import the file, and then you should be able to do editing. I had another request for a 3-panel, and I've had 4-panel sliding glass doors. Absolutely doable. It's something you'd have to do through dynamic components. It's possible if we get enough requests for things like that, that again we'll do a webinar or something like that where we actually go through the process of doing it. Probably recording the video would make more sense to creating a door or window like that. And then final question I have here is negative trim, which is a new one on me. I've not heard that, where it actually goes into a negative space behind the door rather than coming out. That sounds cool, but it's not something we have considered. The easiest thing, I think, to do something like that, and this is, I'm off script right now, you guys, so you asked for it, remember that, would be to do something like this. Because doors are just geometry, I could do something like two walls, one on top of another like that, and then I could place I could place something like this. I'd have to actually do it like this. I have to delete this first. Actually, I had this. I'm going through this because I had this request also about doing recessed openings. Maybe I can't do that. I must do it separate and then move the two together. I think you could do something with nesting multiple walls to actually create that recess around the opening. Again, I was winging it. I didn't know what I was doing. But I think there's something like that that could be done where you could put them, you'd have to input them separately and then slide them together. But I think you could do something along those lines. But there is nothing to make a negative trim in a default door. I'm playing, but I think you could do something like that if that was important. Otherwise, a door, unfortunately, can't remove anything from the wall that it's going into. All right, well, that is our hour, guys. So, again, thank you for showing up. I really appreciate you guys coming out and asking questions, and I love being able to help you out. Do please take the survey afterwards. Let us know how we're doing. Also, let us know what else we could do to give you guys the classes you want to see, the information that you want to hear. Let us know, and we'll try to do that for you. And any questions that weren't answered or you think of something afterwards, again, get those to us, and we'll help you out as much as you can. This webinar should be online in the next week or so, sometime in the next week. And so if you want to come back and watch it again, you can review it. Our other webinars are also up on our support page. So once again, thank you very much, and thanks.